Got to tidy up the set. Where's that stage manager when you need him? Welcome into the Voice of College Football. And this one has me going here. I love this. The Big 12 schedule release. By far, not even close. The most interesting, intriguing, thought-provoking schedule release of all the Power Five of all the conferences in college football. Easily, just this season. Why? We've got 4 new members: Houston, BYU, UCF, Cincinnati. How are they going to be treated? How are they going to be integrated into the league? Also, 2 lame ducks, Oklahoma and Texas. How are they going to be treated? Are they going to be stockpiled with difficult opponents to most likely try to keep them down, keep them out of the conference championship game? I want to see Oklahoma and Texas take on the 4 teams new to the Big 12. Why? Because those are, in a sense, like non-conference games. In terms of the matchups, they are like non-conference games because we've never seen these teams play before as conference peers, and that will not be the case in the future. So when is Texas ever going to schedule UCF or Cincinnati, Oklahoma, and on and on and on, all the matchups that we see that are possible? But were they executed? Were they implemented into the new Big 12 schedule? Well, let's check it out. And we invite you to call into the show. I will leave the link, as I should have already done that. We will leave the link in the comments section. I'd like to remind everyone to please use the Amazon link that we provide when you shop on Amazon. It helps grow the channel. It helps us survive and thrive. We just don't want to survive, because if survival is the goal, then we won't be around long. We're not going to do that. So we are going to prosper and succeed here at the Voice of College Football, or else. So please use the Amazon link in the description section of all the videos here at the Voice of College Football. You can grab the Amazon link. Amazon is in caps. Grab the link. Please use it. There's no reason why not to use the Amazon link, because if you shop on Amazon, which about half of America does every month, think about that. Half of America shops on Amazon every month. Like 160 million Americans shop on Amazon. So half of you shop on Amazon every month. And if you use the link, it doesn't in any way take any money away from you. Doesn't cost you a penny. Same shopping experience. Please use the Amazon link that we provide in the description section. And check out the recent content that we have. We talked about Alabama's decisions. Nick Saban, of course, looking for an offensive and defensive coordinator. And so check out that video with Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. Patreon, Discord. Sign up on Patreon. Join our Discord, as J Love T did just yesterday. J Love T joined us on Discord just yesterday. Just signed up. So we appreciate J Love T. And GBD, I see it there. I want to run through the schedules first. However, so let's get to the Big 12 schedules. So this is what we've got. Baylor. So we already knew the non-conference games, but I am going to say, as I did last night, that I'm very impressed with Baylor. They're playing with the big boys finally. They've decided to actually join the Power Five and play some difficult non-conference games. So it's Utah for Baylor. Okay, that's the big non-conference game, of course, at home on September 9th. Other than that, what stands out, of course, is going to be who they're going to play out of the 4 new teams, and they've got a date at UCF. Baylor at Orlando, September 30th, to take on UCF. And then we also have a date at Cincinnati. Okay. And we've got Houston, and we've got, they play 3 of the 4 newcomers to the Big 12 Conference. And it's a 9-game conference schedule, and Baylor goes on the road 4 times. So they've got 5 at home, 4 on the road. So that's in their favor. And again, trips to Orlando and Cincinnati. And I got to think that the Big 12 is really going to capitalize on having Houston play its Texas contingent. They want to reestablish those old Southwest Conference rivalries. And this is one of them, Baylor and Houston. Okay, on to BYU. They go to Arkansas. They took on the Hogs this past season. They got blasted by Arkansas. And again, we already knew the non-conference slate. BYU opens its first ever Big 12 schedule at Kansas. They've got Cincinnati, of course, the 2 newbies in the league, TCU, Texas Tech. Again, I would have to really analyze this and review them to figure out who does every team miss. So we're not going to dissect it to that degree because it would take me forever to sit here and figure out who BYU does not play, because that's going to determine basically you can determine the strength of schedule by looking at who everyone does not play. Who do they not play? Well, we can do that exercise for BYU. They do not play see, this takes too long. Kansas State. They do not play Kansas State. And again, some other teams, I'm not going to go through the whole litany of teams, but I noticed they don't play Kansas State. All right, so that's BYU. Now let's take a look at Cincinnati. I love Cincinnati's non-conference game at Pitt, but again, we already knew about that. So let's go to the Big 12 side of things. Oklahoma is the opener at Cincinnati. Love that. Great stuff. Cincinnati goes to BYU the next week. Iowa State, Baylor at Oklahoma State. They play all 3 of the newcomers. And so again, we could go through it and comb it and review it to determine who does Cincinnati not play. And again, that's going to determine how difficult these schedules are. I see that they don't play Texas. There is no Texas on the schedule. So that's one possible. And also, Cincinnati does not play TCU. So that seems to be an early advantage there for Cincinnati. No TCU, no Texas for the Bearcats. On to Houston. Houston, you got to think, is going to play all the Texas teams. Texas Tech, Texas, Baylor. TCU's there on September 16th. That is Houston's re-entry into the old Southwest Conference to a certain extent. Cincinnati or Houston and TCU playing on September 16th. Houston with a weak non-conference schedule with Texas San Antonio at Rice and Sam Houston. All right, so they play all the Texas teams. Texas Tech, Texas, Baylor, TCU. That's what I expected. Love the final week of the season at UCF. Although I would think in the future they would want to match Houston against, unless they really believe that they need to match up. And we will see once we look at either Cincinnati. Well, we did. Cincinnati. Okay. They're playing Kansas the final week of the season. I was hoping that Cincinnati and West Virginia would be a thing the final week of the season. And then maybe Houston and UCF would be a thing because they need somebody for UCF to be a last week opponent, and maybe that's going to be it. All right, on to Iowa State. The 3 non-conference games, and then the 2 Oklahoma schools, TCU, they go to Cincinnati, so that's their first trip against one of the newcomers. Iowa State, are they really missing anyone? They do play Texas. They do play Oklahoma. They play TCU. They've got Oklahoma State. They've got Baylor. Out of the newcomers, they've got Iowa State plays BYU on the road November 11th. They play Cincinnati on the road. They do not play Houston, and they do not play UCF. So that's it for Iowa State. Kansas. Good non-conference game for Kansas. They're against Illinois. And then they dive into conference play against BYU. They also play UCF 2 weeks later. And for Kansas, again, we would have to determine who do they not play to determine schedule strength. They do have Oklahoma, Texas. They do not play TCU. So that is a bit of a break for Kansas. These teams are playing or not going to be playing other teams in the Big 12 for the first time in forever since the conference went down to 10 teams in 2012. So for the first time in 11 seasons, there are going to be missed matchups. Although, again, I'm not crazy about Kansas at Cincinnati on the final weekend of the season. I would think that that would be reserved for Kansas State, Kansas. All right, K-State go to Mizzou on September 16th. Then their opener in the Big 12 is UCF. Oklahoma State on the road, Texas Tech. We do see Texas on the schedule for Kansas State. We also see TCU. Out of the newcomers, they've got UCF, they've got Houston, and they missed the other two. So no Cincinnati, no BYU for Kansas State as they conclude the season with Iowa State. And again, depending on how all this works and what the Big 12 determines as rivalry weekend and who should be rivals on the final weekend of the season, and not that rivals only play on the final weekend of the season, but it is rivalry weekend. Maybe Kansas, Iowa State is where they're going here. All right, Oklahoma. All right. So Oklahoma and Texas are intriguing to see how many times they play the four new teams. And right out of the gate, they give Oklahoma a trip to Cincinnati. Love it. Love it. Iowa State, Texas, and Dallas, of course, at the Cotton Bowl, UCF. So there's a home game against UCF. And then they've got BYU late in the season. Oklahoma has never, I don't believe, ever played TCU to finish out the season. The Big 12 has not been aligned to setting up these rivalries the last weekend of the season. They have moved this all around. For a while, it looked like they wanted Texas and Texas Tech to be the final game of the season. Then they thought Texas TCU, so they did that. Of course, Oklahoma State. Bedlam at one point was the final game of the season, but that no longer holds, and it shouldn't because Oklahoma's gone pretty soon. So that's where the Sooners stand. Again, Cincinnati, UCF, and BYU. So I'm impressed that they are matching Oklahoma up with 3 out of the 4 newbies. Oklahoma State, bad non-conference schedule. Then they go to Iowa State. Who do they have out of the newbies? They've got Cincinnati on October 28th. They go to UCF. They go to Houston. They play BYU. They play all 4, and they play the final 3 games of the season. That's strange. Oklahoma State, a longstanding member of the Big 12, plays its most important games if they're in the conference race against the 3 new teams at UCF, at Houston, and BYU to finish the season. And again, the Big 12 not really forming much for rivalry weekend for some odd reason. I don't see any rivalries being played the final weekend of the season in the Big 12. TCU's got that interesting game against Colorado. Let's move on to the conference games at Houston. Right out of the gate, SMU's a non-conference game, of course, then back in conference play. And TCU faces Houston, BYU, and those are the only 2. They do not play UCF. They do not play Cincinnati. And again, we would have to comb through these schedules to see. So we've got a 14-team league. We've got 9 conference games. So everybody plays 9 out of the other 13 teams. So there's 4 teams in conference that for the first time in 11 years, the Big 12 would not be playing everyone in conference. So this has been the truest championship format of all the Power 5 conferences. So give it up for the Big 12. Not that they came up with that ingenious idea. They were forced into it by Texas A&M and Mizzou leaving, but it is the truest championship no longer. Texas at Alabama. Fascinating. At Baylor to open the Big 12 schedule. Kansas, Oklahoma. So who do they play incoming? At Houston. Texas at Houston has to be played. Good to see that. BYU, who trampled Texas about 6 to 7 years ago in back-to-back seasons. Those are the only two new teams that Texas plays. There was no UCF. There was no Cincinnati. And they conclude the season against Texas Tech. That would be the only thing close to a rivalry that we've got on the final weekend of the season, it would appear. I like this Texas Tech game against Oregon, but we're focused on the conference season because that's already been announced. But again, Texas Tech at home against Oregon in week 2. Rarely does Texas Tech get a big-time opponent to come to Lubbock outside the conference, but they do so in 2023 here. They begin a Big 12 play at West Virginia. And Texas Tech faces Houston. What's interesting there is even though Houston has not been a member of the Big 12, Texas Tech and Houston have played fairly frequently as non-conference opponents. Texas Tech has a date at BYU. And so members of the Big 12 outside of Baylor who went to BYU this past season and won in overtime are going to get that look at going to Provo, maybe late in the season for some of them, of course, in November. And that's always an interesting trip in regards to weather at Provo. And Texas Tech finishes with UCF at home and at Texas. All right. On to UCF. Love the date against Boise State on the road. Otherwise, UCF makes history as they open the season. Their Big 12, their inaugural Big 12 schedule at Kansas State. They also have Oklahoma on the road. Let's see who comes to Orlando. Baylor, West Virginia, Oklahoma State, and Houston. So Cincinnati, Houston, there is no BYU on the schedule. Cincinnati, Houston, and they play 2 of the other 3. And finally, I believe this is our last schedule to review. West Virginia at Penn State. Love that game. That's an old Eastern Bloc independent game that used to be played every year. That brings back the memories of Darryl Talley and Todd Blackledge and Major Harris and the like. West Virginia at Penn State. Playing Pitt as well. So West Virginia, kudos to you for playing 2 difficult non-conference opponents. Love it. 1 at home, 1 on the road. Texas Tech to begin the season at home. TCU at home at Houston. So West Virginia gets Houston and UCF on the road. BYU at home, and they play Cincinnati at home. I like what this does for West Virginia's schedule in regards to Cincinnati being 4.5 hours away and them being somewhat of a potential rival. They're not rivals now. Potential rivals because of geography. And but they're not going to play that game the last game of the season. I wish they would. All right, there you have it for the Big 12 schedule. I have dropped the link in the comments section. I'll drop it in there again. Please join the show. Give me your thoughts on the Big 12. And of course, I'm going to run through the comments section and see what you guys have to say. Again, as I've stated a few times, for me to rank how difficult these schedules are beyond just a first glance, I would have to go through and see what are the 4 teams that everyone misses. 13 other teams in the conference, 9 games scheduled, so everybody misses 4 opponents. That's critical. So I will go through that and see how that measures up to see if the Big 12 has screwed anyone or if there is a big advantage given to anyone. All right, welcome into the Voice of College Football. First caller, we got the real MVP.
Hey, Mark, how you doing this evening?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Well, unfortunately, or fortunately for Oklahoma and Texas, they didn't do what I suggested and have them play at all the four new arrivals this year, Mark. What did you think about them only getting like two or three of them instead of having to play all four of them?
Well, I think they did what was fair. They didn't stick it to them. They also didn't avoid. I heard some theories out there that they were going to do everything that they possibly could. And I would have to do the math on this. I don't know if they could build a schedule and completely avoid. I guess they could. They could have those two teams only play former Big 12 teams and not play any of the four new schools. So they sliced it fairly from that standpoint.
Yeah, I'm happy West Virginia finally gets some opponents within their own geography time zone. Do you think this would long term help West Virginia? Because I imagine those plane trips are going to be brutal for them.
So everybody focuses on the travel issue for West Virginia, and I believe that's valid. That's definitely an issue. I tend to look at it this way. I believe that this has to hurt their recruiting because if you are a really good football player in Kansas, and well, that's a bad example. Let's go to Oklahoma, but you can't play for Oklahoma. You're not quite that good. They're not looking at you. And you end up having to go to a neighboring state. You go play at Texas Tech, you go play at Baylor, Kansas. Well, there's incentive there for you to sign at another area school and not just run off to the SEC and go play for, South Carolina or a middling, mid-tier Big Ten school and go play for Maryland, because you're going to be in the region playing games and you're constantly going to be at adjacent states for your family and friends to attend. However, if you're a football player in the neighboring state of West Virginia, what incentive do you have to go to West Virginia? You're not going to play any games in the region aside from the home games. So if you're a good high school football player in Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania, why should you go to West Virginia for that reason? Because you're going to have to go to Texas and Kansas and Oklahoma for all your games. So this at least relieves that a little bit. They've got one game, Cincinnati, and it's not as close as I thought it was. I looked it up the other day. I thought it was more like 2.5 or 3 hours. It's pushing 5 hours to get to Cincinnati from West Virginia.
That's surprising to me, Mark, not gonna lie. But there's this kind of battle in the future. I feel like you got the SEC and Big Ten. Those are your two big dogs on campus. And then you've got for third place the other three conferences, the Big 12, the Pac 12, and the ACC. Would you agree with that premise, first off?
Yes.
Okay. Now, they released the stadium numbers of attendance per game, right, Mark?
Yes.
And to me, that's one of the most critical factors of determining how in tune your fan base is. Because anybody can just flip on a TV station and watch a game for 30 minutes, then change it to another station. So if we were going to compare these conferences, Mark, I would want to isolate as few variables as possible. So if a Big 12 team and a Pac 12 team were playing in, let's say, the same state and played about equal schedule, I think that would be a fair comparison. Wouldn't you say so, Mark?
Yes.
Well, who do you think had more fans on average in 2022 go to their games? BYU or Utah?
Well, I would first want to know the capacity of the stadiums because maybe somebody's got an advantage there. So the percentage of capacity filled would be the number I would want to see. But off the top of my head, I don't know that either stadium's that large. I think they're both in the 50 to 60,000 range.
If you had to take a guess, though, what would you think?
Well, since you're serving this up as a exercise, I'm going to say BYU.
You're right. BYU had an average of 59,000, almost 60,000 fans per game. Utah only had 52,000, Mark.
But did they fill the stadium? That's my question. What was the percentage of capacity? Because if they only have 52,000 seats, then that's all they can do.
Oh, based on just some basic research, Utah's capacity is 63,470. BYU's is also the same number.
Well, that's not good.
So, but
and BYU was a marginal team. They went
right.
7-5, and Utah went to the Pac-12 championship game and went to the Rose Bowl.
Right.
Hmm.
And also, you got to figure out how many big teams did BYU play at home. Probably not very many compared to Utah, because Utah is always in the conference race. BYU at a certain point in the season, it was pretty obvious to me that they weren't going to win their conference or anything. Well, because they're independent. So
Utah's home schedule last year was Southern Utah, San Diego State, Oregon State, USC, Arizona, Stanford. There you go.
Okay. Kevlar's disputing my numbers I found. He says BYU's is 63,000, Utah's is 52,000. So
BYU's home schedule last year was Baylor, Wyoming, Utah State, Arkansas, East Carolina, Utah Tech. People showed up to watch those games. Wow.
Yeah, what does that say, Mark?
It says that BYU is either charging a hell of a lot less per ticket or they're more popular than Utah. That surprises me.
Yeah, I was disputing in the comments just for consistency's sake and accuracy's sakes. Apparently, Utah's capacity is 52,000 and BYU's capacity is 63,000.
So basically, Utah is selling out all of its games.
If those numbers are accurate.
And BYU is getting 95% capacity.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with that schedule, that's kind of amazing. You pointed out.
Yeah, the schedule sucks for BYU. Right. They played Baylor, Arkansas. Yeah, Baylor and Arkansas were the only draws.
Okay, and you know what? Something else is interesting, Mark, at these numbers. Texas and Oklahoma and USC and UCLA are kind of similar teams, based on my perception of them. But according to the stadium attendance number, the SEC is going to get far more fans.
Yes.
Than the Big Ten. Texas, okay, had an average of 100,000 people show up about per game. USC had 64,000.
Yep.
I couldn't imagine it be that big of a gap. Like, I knew there was some gap, but I didn't think it was that massive.
No, that sounds about right. I would have probably guessed very close to that.
I mean, they've only got a few thousand more fans than Ole Miss and Kentucky. Like, that just is surprising to me.
And this was the season that they brought in Lincoln Riley and they went to the Pac-12 championship game. But I would expect that USC and UCLA's numbers are going to skyrocket. Not every game in against Big Ten teams are going to be, Illinois is going to go out there and Rutgers is going to go out there, but it's going to be pretty amped up to see Penn State and Ohio State and Michigan and Wisconsin roll in versus the typical Arizona State, Arizona, Stanford, Cal games.
Right, but what you're saying is kind of already taking place. Because according to this, USC's attendance on a year-to-year basis went up 14.72%.
From the year before when they went 4-8 and they were awful.
Right.
Sure.
So, that is a significant improvement. Now, how much they can keep going at that trend is going to be interesting to find out in the future.
Uncle Rico brings up a good point, and then we will move on to our next call. But Uncle Rico says here, their stadium, I believe he means USC, only holds 78,000. So it used to be 100,000 in the LA Coliseum, or like 94, something like that, and they've changed it quite a bit and reduced it. So they're putting in 64,000 on average in a 78,000 seat stadium.
Yeah, but that just that number was surprising to me, Mark. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
But anyway, Mark, that's all I got for you today.
Thanks, man.
Have a
Appreciate
great
you being
rest of
here.
your show.
You too. All right, let's keep it rolling here on our Big 12 schedule release live stream. We got GBD on the line. Uh-oh.
I did a live show last night, and I listed a bunch of things that I hope the Big 12 stays away from in the schedule release, and all the things that I hope that they would do for West Virginia. And it seems like the Big 12 was watching and decided to do everything I didn't want them to do. I'm not happy about this, Mark. The only thing that I'm glad that they didn't do was send West Virginia to BYU. They did send BYU to West Virginia. That is the only thing that I'm okay with. The only thing. Because what they did was they took away the home game that we had for Texas this year. This was the year we were supposed to have a home game. And that series is tied 6 wins and 6 wins. And on top of that, I said it wouldn't hurt my feelings if they got rid of the road trip to Oklahoma for this year. And guess what? It's on our schedule. And that series is lopsided. We have 1 win against Oklahoma. So they get rid of the home game that we had coming this year against Texas. They keep the road trip that we had against Oklahoma. And then on top of that, we have 5 road trips in conference, 6 total, counting the Penn State game. And then on top of that, they didn't even they staggered towards the end, but at the beginning they give us Texas Tech at home and then back-to-back road trips, TCU and Houston. And that brings me to my last point. I wanted West Virginia to host Houston and go on the road to Cincinnati. What did they do? They send West Virginia to Houston and Cincinnati to West Virginia. Like, this was exactly what I did not want, 100%, except for the BYU thing. I'm glad they didn't send us to Provo. But other than that, this is exactly what I did not want.
So I'm trying to figure out what other team you guys don't play. So you don't play Texas. You don't play Kansas State. You don't play Iowa State.
Right.
And who else?
We get 3. I think we play all 4 of the newbies. We play Houston, UCF, Cincinnati, and BYU. All 4 of those.
Don't you play? You don't play Kansas.
Kansas.
Okay.
There you go.
Well,
yes.
I gotta say, I understand your.
I mean, it's not the toughest schedule. It's not the toughest schedule in the world. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is just some of the things that I hope that they wouldn't do is exactly what they did. Like, first year Houston is in the Big 12. To me, I would think that the bigger money grab would be sending Houston to Morgantown, Dana Holgorsen having to go into a hostile road environment.
Yeah.
His first game or first appearance, is in Morgantown, how that would go. And then the back-to-back road trips, if you're gonna give us 5 road trips, fine, it happens. But try to make it to where none of them are back-to-back. Nope. What they could have done is made the road trip to TCU our first out of conference, because we would be coming off a home game against Pitt, and then the home game to Texas Tech, and then you'd be staggered the rest away. So 2 road trips, and both of them in the state of Texas. The 4-game road stretch that I'm looking at that can make or break our season, it starts with the home game against Pitt, then the home game against Texas Tech, then the road game against TCU, then the road game against Houston. I have us going 2-2, but if we lose to Pitt, we could go 0-4 right there. I have us at 6-6 because of that 4-game stretch, but if we have a 4-game losing streak right there, then we're looking at a 4-8 season.
Okay, see, this is what I'm seeing play into your advantage in this schedule. 5 home games, 4 road. Okay, that's one thing. Number 2 is no Texas, no Kansas State.
I saw it the other way. I saw 4 home. Did I look at that
Oh,
wrong?
did I see that wrong? Okay, I
No,
might be wrong.
that's my bad. Okay, my bad. I thought we had a road trip to TCU. My bad. Okay, so we actually have 5 home games and 4 road trips. All right, so erase that complaint off the board.
Okay.
A lot of people in the comments were like, "What is he talking about?" No, we don't go on the road to TCU, which doesn't make sense because we got them at home last year. I think that's why I assumed that was a road trip.
Mm.
This was supposed to be the year that we were supposed to go on the road to TCU. So that kind of
They
messed me up. I got to
they
redo my
probably
video
had to
because of that
they
now.
probably had to somewhat reshuffle all that home back and forth. They probably had to kind of start over with some of those. They probably couldn't accommodate all,
Right.
keeping with the home away, home away, home away. So something that you and I talked about the other night on the West Virginia show, and everybody, by the way, catches GBD and myself every week talking West Virginia football live. That makes total sense is what you outlined about Dana Holgerson coming to Morgantown. You are the Big 12. You are fill in the blank, the third, the fourth, fifth best conference. But more importantly, when it comes to scheduling, the third, fourth, or fifth most paid attention to conference. You want to create excitement, and you have these 4 new schools coming to create excitement, new matchups. Great. They did a decent job of placing most of those teams before I've really dissected with a fine-tooth comb. But GBD and I were talking about this the other night. Create interesting storylines that college football fans are going to be interested in. Sure, West Virginia and Houston getting together is a storyline, but you have to have Dana Holgerson coming to Morgantown. And the luster is going to be taken off of that a year later. Yes.
Yeah, that was a missed opportunity by the Big 12.
Absolutely.
Big time. And taking away the home game against Texas, but keeping the road game against Oklahoma, I think that was a missed opportunity as well because West Virginia and Texas actually have a healthy rivalry in the Big 12. The series is tied 6 wins and 6 wins for each team. So I think that was a big time blown opportunity as well. This would have been the comeback, game for West Virginia home against Texas. So I'm just some of this doesn't make sense to me, but I'm glad you pointed that out because I was thinking we had 5 road trips in the Big 12, but I guess they had to make TCU come back to Morgantown this year, so we only have 4. So I'm a little less mad now. I am a little less mad.
This is what I don't understand as well, and I don't know if you heard me state this a few minutes ago, is that the Big Ten and the SEC are big on rivalry weekend. They match up all their teams against their main rival. The ACC is kind of hit or miss. Some of them, yes. Some of them, they got kind of oddball games. They really can't match everyone up. The Pac-12 is pretty consistent with that as well. Arizona, Arizona State, USC, UCLA, etc.
With the ACC, you got to remember that a lot of those teams play their rival out of conference SEC. So a lot of that is good. But in conference, I mean, I guess Virginia Tech, NC State, North Carolina. So I think for the most part, the ACC does well, but those outliers kind of throw it off.
Yeah, there's a few that are kind of outliers that they can't accommodate, but they do a generally good job, and they're focused on that as well. For some reason, the Big 12 it's just like they threw paint at the wall.
Yeah, very inconsistent.
Like they didn't accommodate. The only thing close that I can find is Texas and Texas Tech. They don't have anybody playing that's a rival on the last weekend.
It doesn't make sense. Now people are realizing the problem with the Big 12. Big time missed opportunities as far as everybody else is playing rivalry week, and then the Big 12 is just playing another regular Big 12 game. Like I don't understand the leadership at the top of the Big 12 not realizing what we're talking about. To me, this would be a no-brainer. Try to have – I know that might make scheduling a little bit more difficult, but only a little bit more difficult for the first year or two trying it. After the first year or two, then you have it locked in, and you can schedule around it. That's it. So it just – I mean, we're seeing the problem with the Big 12 as far as, why it's so low in the pecking order, not taking advantage of some great chances. And this was a one-time chance for the Big 12 to put Houston against West Virginia in Morgantown. One-time chance. Now, they'll be able to do that in the future, but they've already played, and Dana Horson's already faced his old team. You had one shot, Big 12, and you blew it.
And I would have had no issue with the Big 12 saying, you know what, Oklahoma, Texas, screw you. We're not interested in you. We gave you a fair schedule. We're going to do that, but we're not going to even really consider you as part of the league going forward because you're not going to be here. So we're going to try to envision what we want this league to look like in terms of rivalries going forward and establish those. And wherever Oklahoma and Texas need to play the last weekend, they're going to play. But, so Oklahoma State, obviously, they lose their rival. They lose Bedlam. So figure out, okay, who's that next opponent for Oklahoma State? But for everyone else, again,
Right. You have to
pair
think for
Houston with
everybody.
somebody, pair those Texas teams against each other, pair West Virginia and Cincinnati. At least that would have been my first choice of
Definitely.
West Virginia, Cincinnati.
As far as teams already in the Big 12, I would say Baylor would be the next closest because they haven't won in Morgantown. It's been a pretty good series. So if you want to think outside of the new 4 teams, I would say Baylor, but definitely Cincinnati above because of geography. The Big 12 has to be more consistent. That's basically what we're saying. They call it rivalry week, but it's like the Big 12 doesn't realize that. Rivalry week? What is that? It's rivalry week. You pit everybody's rivals against each other. It's simple. Like everybody else gets it, but the Big 12 doesn't. I don't understand it, Mark. I really don't.
Yeah, they gave no thought to that. That was completely off their radar.
Yep.
You would have
100%.
thought just by coincidence they would have probably scheduled a few.
Well, that's why a lot of people, this was like 2 years ago or something like that, when West Virginia was playing Oklahoma State at the end of the year fairly often. We were arguing about the schedule. I was arguing with somebody about the schedule on air. They're like, no, West Virginia always plays Oklahoma State at the end of the year. I'm like, no, it was Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. Excuse me, Bedlam, excuse me. And they thought because that was a rivalry game, that game was played at the end of the year. I'm like, I'm telling you, it's not. Well, that doesn't make sense. They're rivals. You're wrong going to Blue. I'm like, number one, you're right. It doesn't make sense. But number two, I'm not wrong. They don't play at the end of the year every year.
Zone 6, I don't know if he's being serious here, says the Big 12 does rivalry week the week before is why.
When is the Red River rivalry played?
Well, that's in October, of course.
Yeah. And then Bedlam is shuffled around.
So the week before, UCF and Texas Tech and Texas and Iowa State?
No. It just so happened West Virginia played Cincinnati in the next to the last week, and that gave the impression that that could be the case when it's not.
Oklahoma, BYU?
Nope.
Okay. Kansas State, okay. But, yeah, I'm not buying that.
No. There's no consistency whatsoever. There's not. That's the bottom line.
I have been waiting for the schedule release. I did think that it was going to be the most interesting.
You know what? Just to give everybody some inside information on my channel. So I'm literally going to have to redo the video that I just did because I was wrong about going on the road to TCU. So yes, I got to redo an entire video. That video will never exist now because it was complete. And I was mad about something that wasn't there. So I have to redo a video now. But I'm glad, before I complain, I'm not really complaining about it because I'm glad that I came on this show, because had I not, and I would have released that video, holy crap. Not good.
Well, you get to double your views this way.
There you go. There you go. I guess my brain just automatically, I saw TCU and I knew we played TCU at home last year. So I guess my brain just automatically said, you're playing on the road this year. I'm guessing. That's my only guess.
All of us that produce content that has to be specific at times, I've done the same thing at least a dozen times. I post a video and I'm like, oh, I forgot about that.
And they definitely let you have it.
Yes. Yeah, you suddenly don't know anything about college football just because you forgot something.
You're an idiot because you messed up on one thing. Yep. Oh yeah, definitely. Well, Mark, I got to run now. I got some other things I got to do with the kids, but I wanted to jump in there and give my 2 cents. So not as mad at the Big 12, but I still think there's missed opportunities on the board. West Virginia going to Houston, that was a swing and a miss by the Big 12. Taking away the home game against Texas and keeping the road trip to Oklahoma, that was a swing and a miss. So few things they messed up on, but not quite as bad as what I thought it was. And honestly, that TCU game being at home, that could affect my prediction, because I think that's a win, because I think TCU takes a significant step backwards. They didn't have People don't realize they did not have a good defense this year. And if you looked at how TCU won this year, it was comeback after comeback after comeback after comeback, close game, close game. Even West Virginia, they were only up by 3 before that touchdown pass in the last 20 seconds to put it away. I don't think they get the bounce of the ball like they did last year. I think the defense is still bad, and they lose a large chunk of that offense that basically won them football games. So before you call me crazy, number one, last year when they had that awesome offense in Morgantown, it took a late touchdown to put that game away, and that's going to be gone. I truly think that that's a winnable game for West Virginia.
Well, I don't know that a lot of people got to see it or really chose to see it, but from what I understand, they got killed their last game too.
I think I know what you're talking about. I'll
Yeah.
have to do some research, but I think I know what you're talking about. Basically, they ran out of miracles, is what happened.
Yeah, they sure did. All
Yeah.
right, man. Appreciate you being here. GBD, the one and only.
Anytime, man. Great show as usual.
Thanks, man. All right. Welcome in, everyone, to the Voice of College Football. We are breaking down Big 12 schedules, and I do think it is certainly valid what a number of people are responding to in the chat, saying, hey, the Big 12 is counter-programming to a certain extent. They are not going to go head-to-head with the SEC and the Big 10 and really the entire nation on rivalry week, and they're going to put those rivalry games earlier, maybe the week before, as is noted here by Sorgy Stories and others had noted the week before. You got Kansas State, Cincinnati, West Virginia, and Baylor, TCU as rivalry games the weekend before. Believe that's a bit of a cop-out to a certain extent. Cole Varks is letting us know it's a mistake on the website. I wonder if he's talking about that West Virginia TCU game. Do we need to check that out? Is that an issue here, possibly? We don't want, we do not want GBD reshooting his video if he doesn't have to. So I'll have to find him on that one. So that was West Virginia TCU. Let's look at this. Okay. They are at home against TCU. Okay. And I don't know, Cole Varks, if you were talking about that, but I just thought I would address that just in case. Joel, the TCU quarterback Max Duggan, is not returning. Browns and Beers is saying TCU does not come to Morgantown. So let's double check on this. 2023. That game's at TCU. So I'm looking at the West Virginia schedule for, let's get this straight, at TCU, at Houston, at UCF, at Oklahoma, at Baylor. So you know what I'm going to have to do? We got to get GBD on the line here. Thank you for clarifying that. So CBS Sports is wrong. Look at that. So hopefully we can catch GBD, and we'll let him know that he does not need to reshoot his video. So thank you all for that. What I will do at the same time is I'm going to drop the link in the live chat, and please join the show. Let us know what you think about the new Big 12 schedule or anything, of course, in college football. We've got 2 more shows this afternoon. We've got the Iowa show coming up at 5:30 Eastern, 4:30 Central. Please join us on our Hawkeyes channel and our conversation that we have each and every week with Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm. It's always a great time with Corey, always informative discussion, debate on Iowa football at 5:30 Eastern, and then at 7 Eastern, Nebraska channel with Greg Peterson from Husker Online. And so we've got 2 more live streams today on the Voice of College Football. GBD, do not reshoot that video. CBS Sports was wrong. Yes, GBD, can you hear me right now? Yes, you can be mad again, but at least don't be mad because you reshot your video. So sorry about that. We went to CBS Sports, and CBS Sports is wrong. They got the scheduling of the West Virginia TCU game wrong. So who knows how many other mistakes they made. Can we even trust these schedules? I'll have to go to another site. Okay. Very good. Very good. Yes, West Virginia at TCU. So the Mountaineers play 5 road games. Want to let everyone out there know that we do have a West Virginia channel. Please get on over to our West Virginia channel. Joey, if you're in the chat, I don't know if you are, would you please put the West Virginia channel link in the chat? So here's the deal, everyone. If you're a West Virginia football fan, you're a Big 12 football fan, yes, please subscribe to our West Virginia channel. Even if you could care less about West Virginia or hate West Virginia, please, for me, for the health of our channel, for our brand, for everything we're building here at the Voice of College Football, please go to the West Virginia channel and subscribe and get us to 1,000 subs. We get to 1,000 subs, YouTube takes us seriously. They start to push the videos out into traffic. There it is. Joey. We are looking for the West Virginia channel link. That's what I've been talking up. So if you could drop the West Virginia channel link into the chat, that would be phenomenal. But in the meantime, Joey's letting us know we can talk college football 24/7, 365 on our Patreon. So sign up on Patreon, go to MarkRogersTV, and you get your Discord link where you can talk with the knuckleheads 24/7, 365 on college football. Dave, you're very nice. Thank you so much for that. Voice of College Football, everything else. Thank you for that so much. Well, I have gone through the Big 12 schedule. Again, I didn't comb through it because it would be agonizing to comb through, but I do think that the key element, there are 2 basic elements that you start with here. Number 1 would be how many home versus road games do you play? So for all these conferences, the one thing that you can knock the 9-game schedule for is that there obviously has to be a decision by the conference each and every year where you give half the teams 5 games at home and half the teams 4 games. And of course, you switch it every year. So it ultimately is balanced, but each season it's somewhat unfair. Half the teams play 5 games at home, half the teams play 4 at home. So there's that discrepancy. And now we finally have an issue with the Big 12 that we haven't had for 11 seasons. And that is that not everyone plays everyone. When everyone plays everyone, yeah, you can make a determination and you can analyze the schedules and say, well, this schedule is a little bit tougher because they've got a really tough 3-game stretch. But for that team that's got the tough 3-game stretch, they've got an easy 3-game stretch because everybody plays exactly the same schedule. But now we have come to a situation that we have in all the other conferences where schedule makers hold a lot of power. Now we've got 14 teams in the league, 13 other teams for every team to schedule, and they only play 9 out of the 13. So Who are the 4 that get missed? For West Virginia, that's Texas, Kansas State, Iowa State, and Kansas. You would consider Texas and Kansas State to be 2 of the better teams in the league, of course. Iowa State and Kansas aren't bad. There's really no bad programs or teams in this league as it stands right now. So that's one strength of this conference, is that there are no bad programs. There's no Colorado, and we'll see about Dion, and we'll see what he's able to put together this year. But as of last season, there is no Colorado in the Big 12. There is no what we saw out of Arizona for a few seasons, which was completely deplorable, pathetic, a joke. No Rutgers that lost 21 consecutive games in the Big 10. There's no Vandy, the Vandy that we saw from 2018 through 2021. Not the one that won 2 consecutive games, of course, this season, but there are none of those type teams in the Big 12. So the Big 12, no elites, but no garbage at the bottom. It's a solid conference. It's for pure college football enjoyment. Not talking about the playoff, not talking about teams and programs that can compete for a national championship, just simply talking about strength of the conference, more from a viewing standpoint. What is going to provide entertainment? It's an entertaining conference because anybody can beat anybody in this conference. TCU could go from being 9-0 last season to 3-6 and really not even be that much worse. It's a competitive conference. It is a competitive conference. I do think that the conversation that we started last night while we were going through the USC schedule on the USC channel, please check it out, was interesting concerning the Pac-12. So we've got a number of Pac-12 fans. I see our buddy Connor Johnson showing up. Got a number of Pac-12 fans here, and they are happy with the resurgence of their conference. Just in time for USC and UCLA to leave, of course, but happy about the resurgence of their conference. And Pac-12 football was fun to watch, and not just fun, like crazy games, zany games, crazy plays, but legit. Pac-12 football for the first time in about 5 years was legitimately competitive with the rest of the country. And with the quarterbacks coming back in the Pac-12, it should be another fun season and competitive season, both inside the Pac-12, and I want to see how the Pac-12 is going to compete outside the conference. It's probably the 3rd best conference in America, although with these 4 entries for one season, just for one season, if Brent Venables pulls Oklahoma together and Texas continues to improve what they showed us 2 seasons ago at 5-7 versus the improvement to 8-4 this past season, with the addition of UCF, Houston, BYU, and Cincinnati, this conference has a chance, if the Big Ten is down, to be the 2nd best conference. Has a chance to be the 2nd best conference. I don't think it will, but it is a deep conference. 14 deep this season with no really bad teams. Iowa State might be bad. And it's going to be certainly intriguing to see the 4 new teams play a complete Power 5 schedule. You know, let's take one of these newcomers. Who's the next one we get to? Houston. Well, they may be not as good of an example as I wanted because they don't play anybody outside the conference. They've got UTSA, Rice, and Sam Houston. So they play 9 Power 5 opponents, all in conference. But as opposed to in the past, they played maybe 1 or 2 Power 5 conference opponents. Now they play 9. Shoot, UCF, where's their schedule? Okay, they're not playing any Power 5 opponents. This is breaking down on me. Kent State, Boise State on the road, Villanova. But again, 9 Power 5 opponents as opposed to the 2 that they would typically play. Cincinnati does have a game against Pitt. So they play 10 Power 5 opponents. And you could argue that some of them are obviously new to the Power 5. And BYU's got that date against Arkansas, so they play 10 Power 5 opponents. Look at this. We got Joey showing up today.
What's going on, man? So
Not too much.
I haven't even got to look at the new schedules out yet. I was working on that stuff that you and I talked about earlier and just got finished up, so I popped in here. So I haven't even seen West Virginia's schedule.
Can you see it on the screen?
Yeah, so at Penn State, that's an easy win. Duquesne will be a tough one. Yeah, I just don't know what's going to happen next year with West Virginia. They should go to a bowl, but I don't see us getting. Honestly, I don't see us making 7 wins. I can see us getting 6.
So, Joey, I don't know if you heard this before when you were on, but CBS Sports made an error. That TCU game's on the road.
Okay.
So they're
TCU
playing
shouldn't be too bad this year. Honestly, they lost so many players. I think we'll beat TCU. And I think we'll beat Pitt. I know we'll beat Duquesne, so that's 3. Texas Tech will be a little tough. Houston will be tough, especially at Houston, especially playing West Virginia. I can find 6 victories out here. I mean, don't know where they're at. UCF and maybe Cincinnati, maybe Baylor. I don't see 7 victories. I can see 6 though. I just don't know. Unless Neil Brown surprises us all, and that's a possibility.
And I did hear you right, Joey, that after the Pitt game, you were counting West Virginia at 3-0.
No, they'll lose to Penn State.
Okay.
I think they'll beat Duquesne, of course. Pitt, I think they'll beat Pitt, and I think they'll lose to Texas Tech and beat TCU.
This conference is full of 50-50 games and, 60-40 type games, more so than any other conference.
Oh, it always is. Every year, it always is.
And now you got 4
even
other teams
when Oklahoma,
that are like
even
that.
when Oklahoma is good, right? Even when Oklahoma is really good and a dominant team, a lot of their games in the conference are still 50-50. Like, for instance, if they have to travel to Morgantown, that's always a 50-50 game for Oklahoma. Even though they generally win, I mean, we've only beat them once. It's really a close game, like one of them 58-56 games or 49-48 games or something. I think that but Oklahoma State's always a 50-50 game for West Virginia. So is Texas Tech, TCU. TCU this past year was a 50-50 game as far as the way the game was played. We should have beat TCU. So, I'm not saying that West Virginia's that Neil Brown can't coach. I think he's a great coach, like I've always said, Sunday through Friday, and just can't coach on Saturday. He's a decent recruiter. He's not very good at keeping his athletes, though. They always transfer. We lose a lot of players to transfer portal every year. So, and this year was no exception.
Well, whether it's Ren Baker or whomever wants to get a hold of Neil Brown, and if they truly believe that he's a good builder of the program and runs a really good program other than game day, then you have a heart-to-heart with him and let him know that you believe in him, but he needs some help on Saturday.
Now, SEC Dog says in the chat, West Virginia 2-10 and Neil Brown fired possibly before the end of the season. That wouldn't surprise me at all either. I mean, I think if they come out and they they lose to Penn State, beat Duquesne, lose to Pitt, lose to Texas Tech, that's it. He's fired. If we start the season 1-3, he's fired. That's
a tough start to the season.
It is a tough start to the season. There's 3 losable games out in the top 4. Very losable games. If he loses those 3 games, I think he's fired. And we have a new coach when we face TCU.
I don't know if you were listening when GBD was on, but we both wanted to see Houston have to go to Morgantown.
Yeah, I think everybody wanted to see that, and probably why they scheduled it at Houston. I don't know why. I don't know why they do that, but still, I guess we can go to Houston and kick their butt. It doesn't make a difference. I think the 4 teams that are coming in: Houston, UCF, Cincinnati, and BYU. I think BYU will be okay of the 4 because of the schedule they normally play.
Yep.
But I think the other 3 will have a tough time getting their footing in a Power 5. It's just a step up. And
I agree. I think they'll do fine. I don't think they're going to embarrass themselves, but yeah, I don't think they're going to compete at the top.
No, I don't think they'll embarrass themselves, but I think that they'll lose games they're not used to losing. UCF's not, or Oklahoma's not used to lose, or not Oklahoma. Cincinnati is not used to losing 4 or 5 games. They'll lose 4 or 5 games their first couple of years in the Big 12.
Yeah.
And same thing with Houston. They're going to lose 4 or 5 games their first year in the Big 12. So
and especially with Cincinnati, with Scott Satterfield, who I'm not necessarily sold on as a head coach.
True. Very true.
Versus Luke Fickell. If Luke Fickell was coming into this league, be a little bit different of a story.
And then I've always said Dana Holgerson's not a great coach. And so, I think he kind of proved that last year at Houston. Should have had a lot better record than he had at Houston last year. He did that same thing at West Virginia. If everybody remembers 2018, we had a team that should have been in the playoffs in 2018, and we struggled to win 8 games. So
I might be mixing up years. Is that the season of the 58-56 loss to Oklahoma?
Yes.
Yeah, the crazy game, or 59-56, whatever it was. There was a strip sack at midfield. Otherwise, West Virginia probably wins the game.
Yeah, West Virginia was ahead by 2 touchdowns at one time in that game. Late in the third quarter, we were ahead by 2 touchdowns, and they got a strip sack, scoop score, and then I think it was an interception that returned for a touchdown. It seems like, and caught up with us. It was a good game, but still, we lost it. But now, do you agree when I said that BYU won't have as much trouble as the other 3 getting their footing in the Big 12?
That's a great question, because I don't have like a definitive, they're the best, they're the second, they're third, and they're last out of those 4 that come into the league. I produced a number of videos when that announcement was made, and I had arguments for all 4 as being the best. And if you look at of course, Cincinnati's the best right now. Right this second, Cincinnati has been the best, but they just lost their coach, who has been the biggest reason why they've been the best group of 5. UCF was 4 or 5 years ago. Houston was 10 years ago. But I would say, yes, the track record for BYU has been the most consistent, and they have consistently played the toughest schedule. They have played the oddest schedule. I used to do schedule rankings, and I would say this about BYU every year. I would always open the video and say, this is the oddest schedule in college football, because they always load up against the toughest teams they can find, practically, most of them in the Pac-12, but also in really every conference. They played Arkansas last year out of the SEC. But then you can tell that they have spots in their schedule as an independent when you could tell they couldn't find anyone, because all the conference teams are playing in their own conferences, and they'd play like Wagner and Utah Tech like at odd times during the season. So it was a very disjointed up and down schedule. But yeah, they would play 5 games that were as tough as anybody in the country. Then they'd play like 3 or 4 games against Boise States, those type of schools. And then they would play about 3 games against like absolutely nobody.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, they've been the best football playing school out of those four consistently for the last 45 years.
Right. I see people all the time, and it's true. Okay, Cincinnati, very good team. Houston, very good team. And they talk about how they dominated their conference, and they're so good. That's not going to matter moving up to a Power 5 level, and it's just a completely different type of football. I'm not saying that it's that much greater, and any group of 5 can beat any Power 5 team on a one-off. If they're just facing them off, when you only have to play 1 or 2 Power 5 teams a year, you're capable of beating those 2. But when you're having to play them week in and week out, I think you get run down. I think the schedule gets heavy on you, and you might start off with a bang and then start suffering after that. And so if we look at Houston here, they got UTSA, Rice, fairly easy, right? Then TCU, that's going to be a tough one for them. Sam Houston, another easy one. Then Texas Tech before they play West Virginia. So coming off of and 2 out of 3 weeks before they play West Virginia, they got to play TCU and Texas Tech. West Virginia's going to be the 3rd Power 5 program. That could be tough for them.
Yeah, they should have 3 wins non-conference, but yeah, who don't they play? They don't appear to play Oklahoma, so they do miss Oklahoma. And
Right.
Again, 4 teams in the conference that they don't play, Oklahoma being one of them.
Yeah,
All
are they
right.
playing Iowa State? I don't see Iowa State on there either.
No Iowa State. No Kansas. No Iowa State, Kansas, Oklahoma.
Yeah. All right, so Mark, I'll let somebody else call in.
All right, Joey.
And thanks. We will
Appreciate
talk to
you being
everybody.
here. Thanks,
All
man.
right, see you later, man.
Have a good day. It's our man, Joey Foster. David Greenshield, appreciate you being here, sir. Hey, Mark, when are you doing the Big Ten schedule? Well, I got to say that the Big Ten schedule release kind of jumped up on me, and I was not prepared for that. So the Big Ten schedule was released whenever that was, 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe back during the season. I don't even recall. But once we got news of the ACC and the Big 12, I thought, hey, what the heck? Let's analyze this live. Let's look at it live as soon as it's released. So sure, we can do the same thing with the Big 10. We can go through all the schedules and go live and look at the Big 10. Why don't we? I think I've got some incentive to do that. We seem to have a few Big 10 fans around here on the channel. So why don't we do that? Absolutely. All right, everyone. In an hour and 15 minutes, we'll be live on the Iowa channel with Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm, slicing up the Hawkeyes. I will give everyone one more shot at jumping on the show if you'd like. Otherwise, we will move it on and get ready for Iowa and Nebraska. Later tonight, the Hawkeyes at 5:30 Eastern and Nebraska at 7 Eastern on those respective channels. In the meantime, we would appreciate if you would shop Amazon using the link in the description section of the videos. You would also consider joining us on Patreon. Just go to MarkRogersTV on Patreon. You go to patreon.com, search MarkRogersTV. And as Joey is letting everyone know, we would love to get our West Virginia channel to 1,000 subs. We have poured ourselves into it. We've done 50 live streams. We're posting content there regularly. We're standing at about 770 subs. We need about 230. Even if you hate West Virginia football, I would ask that you would subscribe if you believe in what we're doing here at the Voice of College Football. And then when we get safely over 1,000 and YouTube says, you know what? We believe in you. We can see that you're here to stay, and we will push your videos out into traffic and help you. Then you can unsubscribe at that point. Our man Exploring with Ben. Haven't had a chance to speak with Ben in quite some time, but he's always around. And we appreciate Ben being here. Exploring with Ben. Join Mark on Patreon. It is $5 a month. Extra perks, Mark's picks, which I know is not going to help you out until September, but the Discord is the big thing this time of year. college football talk 24/7, 365 with all the knuckleheads. And keep in mind that when you join us on Patreon, you can give me all sorts of requests and also recommendations on how to better provide entertainment and college football discussion for all of you. Sports Talk 101, appreciate you being here. Thank you for that. All right, here we go. We are headed off to talk Iowa football at 5:30 Eastern. We will see you all then. And in the meantime, I believe we're going to go through on David's request and do a Big Ten schedule release show. And we'll just pretend that the Big Ten schedule was just released. But we will set that up here in the next week or two. And also, we are going to do a State of the Channel, State of the Voice of College Football show as well, sometime here in the next few weeks. And again, if you're subscribed and you have the notifications on, then you can track all our live shows. And I post a community schedule, live schedule on the community page each and every morning, so you know when we're live. Joel, appreciate you being here. Zone 6, Troy V, Connor, of course, and a whole lot of others. Mike, Rotundo, Roger Dodger, thanks for being here with the Voice of College Football, and we will see you in about 75 minutes on the Iowa channel.